All right, welcome everybody. Today is April 21st, 2021, and this is the Kubernetes Production Readiness Subproject meeting, and let's get started. So just a couple things on the agenda today, which I'm displaying here. We had some action items. I had some action items that I hadn't followed up. Everybody else followed up on theirs, I think. And so I did, thankfully. And the one that we really need to go over here is review the survey. So a year ago, just about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, we did a survey as we were forming this group about different versions of Kubernetes and whether people have ever had to roll them back, whether they enable things in production, alpha features in production, that sort of thing. And part of the goal of doing that survey a year ago was to get a baseline for how often people do this so that we can see whether our efforts in this group actually make a difference. So I have updated that survey with a few changes, and we can review it here. So I think before I assume it's showing, yeah, okay. So just to say one more thing is before we do that, we also can consider removing questions if we think they're not useful. Shorter surveys are, get better responses. But anyway, just something to think about. So changes since the last one. Basically, I added a little blurb here, oops, just to say, hey, we started this a year ago. One question is, we originally talked about doing this like maybe twice a year, and then we didn't. But of course, we didn't get to where we are mandatory until 121, which is the release that just came out. So I don't know that the results would have been all that different over the last year than the first one. I mean, we did some reviews, so maybe it would have been a little different. But do we think we want to do this like semi-annually? And it's more work. It's not hard to run the survey, but analyzing the results actually takes some time. I have by the way, for those, I know, because Alana, you weren't involved at the time, so you probably never saw this. I added a link here to the results from last time.
Yeah, I saw that. I haven't had a chance to go through them, but I think it would be super interesting. As I saw at least one of the questions you had altered because of the survey results from last time, like missing buckets. So
yeah, there's some missing buckets. Those weren't such a big deal, but the biggest deal was that we foolishly asked the question, have you ever had to roll back? And then we forgot to ask the question of like, and then we asked the question, why did you roll back? Both good questions. And then we never asked the question of which version did you have to roll back, which makes it really hard to know when you do the next survey whether like the versions with PRR in them, are less likely to be rolled back. So so I updated the question to do that. So we got about 80 responses last time. Hopefully we can get better spread, and maybe I can work with Bob Killen at in Contribex to try and see if he has ways to communicate it better or something. But anyway, yeah, this is it. This is shared now with KDev, so you should have access to it. But anyway, you can look through it if you want. But anyway, we don't need to do it now. I just wanted to show you that it's here in case you ever want to take a look.
Great. Yeah, I know I've talked to Bob about this before because Instrumentation was trying to run a survey at some point, and my understanding is that I think Google Forms aren't available in China necessarily. So I think they have like some way to send a Linux Foundation form out to contributors who can't access Google Forms, but I don't know what the process is for that, and we'd have to convert it. So
that's going to be painful because we also, right, these go into, maybe it depends, right? I don't know how those work, but these go into a sheet that then I load into BigQuery, and munge around with the data. So, oh, Kirsten's here. Hi, Kirsten. And
Hey.
so, I don't know that I want to. I mean, that would be nice, but I don't know what's involved with that. If you want to check that out, you're welcome to. Okay. Anyway, so what do you think? Annual, semi-annual?
I think I'm liking annual right now.
Okay.
I want to have time for 2 significant things to hit before we give our next one. I want to see. I think we got about half the enhancements before we required. I think we got about half getting PRR review in 119 and 120. But I want to, before we do the next one, I want to make sure that clouds have hopefully caught up to 121 before we issue the next one. I know like GK and EKS, they tend to lag behind a bit. And I would like to have the first round of permabeta things removed. So 122,
yeah. Okay.
I would like to see just how big that comes back, right? It was actually an action item out of the first time we ran this survey.
Yes.
To make sure we got that landed and make sure it stuck.
Yeah, that's
I
reasonable.
want the next one to really show us that impact.
Okay, yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah,
okay.
I think that's, sorry.
Do we have communication? Sorry, go ahead.
I think I agree with David. I think like running it like semi-annually will be too frequent, because especially with like 3 releases per year, it means like running every 1.5 release. So it seems too frequent to me.
+1 for me for doing it annually. Should we have an agenda item for what's going on with the 122 removals? I guess that's not really our group. But I haven't seen comms about this, so.
About 122 removals?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mostly I'm just worried about like,
we can try again. So we tried Kubernetes dev, Kubernetes users, the group out on the discourse page.
Oh, it's just got to be like constant. Otherwise people forget. Mostly I know that things are happening around like preventing perma beta stuff. And I have been like working on trying to prevent things from getting pulled, but I don't know when it's happening or what's affected. So that would be my concern.
Great. I will. Well, so we have a doc page that describes it and describes the changes that are required. It's come up at API machinery meetings. We have broadcasts to those mailing lists.
David, maybe there's those leads meetings. Maybe you can add the agenda item there too.
Okay, you can add it to the leads meetings. Yeah, I guess I don't mind distributing like the stuff we've sent before even more broadly if there is more broadly to go.
Yeah, I think that would be super helpful, because it makes me nervous as like not really knowing what's in scope, what's not in scope, what's on the plan for being axed, what's not, because I've been looking at various things like, well, we don't want things being perma beta forever. So any feature flags that have been sitting around in beta, we need to get rid of those.
It's not
but
feature
that's
flags,
not in scope of this PR.
It's API. It's
Yeah.
API right now.
Do you have suggestions other than Kubernetes users, Kubernetes dev?
I think KDev is great. I think just being super clear about like, these APIs are going away this release.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. We can rebroadcast. That's exactly what the message said.
Yeah.
The description.
Like I know some APIs were going away, like, but the description of like these beta APIs are going away is very different than what's an example of something being removed.
It enumerated the list.
Exactly.
So it's out there. It did enumerate the list. I'm happy to resend it. And then, yes, we have a docs page all about the ones that are getting removed, why they're getting removed, what defaults are changing, how you react. that's already out there as well and was included in the email. So,
Okay. All right, let's keep on with our little survey then. So we all agree annual is good. Okay, this hasn't changed. Here I added cops and rancher because those were two that were on that showed up as little clusters in the other category. And then I split self-hosted into on-prem and on a cloud provider, meaning like you can run obviously open source Kubernetes on any cloud provider. And I thought that might be a useful distinction, but I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, like IaaS versus bare metal.
Yeah, basically. Or I mean, if you hosted it yourself on-prem, like yeah, on your own bare metal, or I guess on your own private cloud, you know, that would be on-prem.
Yeah.
But how can I say this? Nothing changes here. Nothing changes here. Versions used to be 1.10 or earlier. I bumped that to 1.13 or earlier. Our last survey, I kind of picked 113 earlier because in our last survey, almost 25% of the people were on 113 a year ago. 2020. Sorry, too many things here. Anyway, I was gonna see if I could find that, but it's fine. That was kind of the cutoff. Was 113, and then it, you know, it went up to 117 or something there, and like, anyway, if people think that's still too old, we can bump it up further. All the way to 121, which is the current release.
One thing that, sorry, jumping up a little bit, I noticed, you know, we ask for like number of nodes and I think number of clusters. We don't ask for numbers of pods per cluster. I don't know if that's relevant here, but I think like the density of packing in a given cluster also gives you a picture of how the cluster is being used.
that's a good point.
That is true. I mean, I think partly we are just trying to measure sort of size of your deployment.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking of like, you know, somebody might have a cluster with like 10 nodes and they're running like, you know, 5 real workloads or 10 real workloads. And that's a very different situation, like basically stacking one workload per node versus, oh yeah, we're running 200 pods a node. And that's currently not really, there's no way to like indicate that. I would be super interesting to hear, you know, people are talking about, ooh, we've got 10,000 nodes. Well, do you have 100,000 pods? If people are willing to volunteer that information.
It's not necessarily as easily. Do you think they know? Like
I definitely knew when I was running clusters in production, so I would assume other people who are administering clusters would know how many.
But like, I couldn't answer that question for GK for GKE, right? I can say I've got more than 10,000 nodes and more than 1,000 clusters, certainly in management, right?
And surely you also have more than 10,000 pods. Like
sure,
total. Like yes, you'll know how many approximately like how many pods you're running. Doesn't have to be exact.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're not asking for what's the density of pods. You're just saying how many pods.
Yes.
I don't know. What do other people think?
I'm interested in how we would use that information with the other questions we have. I'm certainly open to it. But you know, how would we relate that to how frequently you roll back, for instance, right? The next questions that we have, I guess I don't know if they're the next questions, but there are questions about have you rolled back and why? How would the number of pods help us analyze it differently?
So let's look at what we did last time. So last time we looked what did we slice by those two dimensions? Oldest version versus newest version based on number of nodes under management, number of clusters under management. Some of these have obvious kind of like, you know, if you are got more than 10,000, or if you got more than 1,000 clusters, then your newest is the latest one and your oldest is the oldest one. You know, so even that wasn't super useful. What else did we slice that way?
What we used the nodes for was to try to decide where we were going to focus. And I remember, at least I had not considered it when we started, but when we got into reviewing the results, it became clear that it doesn't really matter what someone with more than 10,000 nodes under management does, because they've done all the things. If you have more than 1,000 clusters, you will have had to roll one of them back. Just, it always happens. And they appear to use some of our debugging differently, right? Like when I remember the middle set of people actually used events for debugging. I don't know if you remember that. It was weird and noteworthy that like people actually looked at the logs to figure out what was going wrong. And that really surprised me at the time, but we were able to relate it to the number of nodes that they had. Do we think pods will tell us something new and distinct?
So I don't think that they would necessarily.
Okay.
I think it's a fair and a reasonable question. I don't know they would necessarily give us another dimension to slice on. It's just another piece of, like, I mean, for example, ops versus dev versus DevOps. Like, should we take that out? Because I don't think we're slicing on that. But it's demographic information that we're currently collecting. So, and I think this is like the only real survey that we're doing where we're gathering this data. So, I mean, I would be totally fair. It would be fair to say, well, we're not really doing anything with that, so let's toss that.
We were trying to look at ops versus DevOps to inform the PRR survey questions around, you know, do you want to focus on logs or do you want to focus on metrics, and which sorts of things will help which sorts of roles, right? Because even if you do have a lot of nodes under management, the way you interact with it, if you're trying to develop on it, is different than the way you interact with it if you're just trying to keep the bits running.
Yeah, so we almost would want to exclude, I don't know that we did this, but we, you know, if we did a deeper analysis than I did, we might even want to just exclude people whose role is development, because like they're not really.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think that the framing here is just not right, because right now we have, you know, for example, like DevOps, DevOps. I think what you're pointing at more is perhaps application platform, like, you know, direct cluster administration, that kind of thing. And I don't actually think that we get that out of dev versus ops versus DevOps.
Okay, I'm open to changing that, get that information better.
Yeah, because that might give us more signal there if that's what we're trying to filter on with that question.
So you're thinking get rid of the 3 that we have and shift it to what? Application?
Like application development, like operating, and this is not very soundbitey, but like operating Kubernetes as a platform, either for, you know, like one team or for others to consume Kubernetes. Like there's basically like
it's
the layers,
fit in a radio bubble.
Yeah. So what I might suggest, Alana, like it sounds like you have some ideas around that. You can you should have edit privileges on this form, so you could go and add a second question, and then we can all offline pick, you know, or I don't think it has comment ability like real, you know, like docs do.
Okay, yeah, no, I can try to like spitball some possibilities.
Yeah, some ideas. Yeah, we don't need to do that live, but that's a great point that this might not really capture what we're trying to get out of that. So David, you are interested in how those things dictate, sorry, just a second, Kirsten, about, because we have later questions about what tools people use to debug. And so you wanted to see how these correlate to that. And then the other use of that data is like application developers who fill out this form may not have the context to really give us the information we want, and we may want to exclude them, that kind of thing. Do we see other purposes for this? Just so if Alana's going to think about some new ideas, keeping those things in mind.
Yeah, that was my only memory of how we used that demographic information before.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, and was it Kirsten?
Oh yeah, I just had a general question if somebody's spying on the meeting. Is the purpose of the survey to sort of survey more end users of Kubernetes to inform what the PRR is going to sort of ask for from the KEP authors, to make sure that you're asking them the right questions for the benefit of the
Essentially, yes. We're talking about
cool.
by end users. If by end users you mean cluster operators, as opposed to yeah.
So yes, that's why it's also to determine whether this group is effective. If we're not effective, then we have to either try to become effective or decide it's not worth our time.
Makes sense. No, thanks for explaining. I realized it when everybody was talking, but I just wanted to confirm. Thanks.
Yeah. And I mean, some of these questions, if we start to, I don't know what is that doing?
I just duplicated the question.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Are these really useful for that? This was more, I think, our curiosity than our, like.
I will admit that one, it was informative for the versions, because what happened is when you got like a GKE user, you could see, oh, that's why you're at that level, right?
Right.
So it helped explain that. I don't think we used it to slice anything else, because after we gathered it, we realized none of us wanted to allow this to become some sort of marketing tool.
Yeah, in fact, if you look at this thing that I shared, I believe I didn't include anything about that in this whole thing.
Yeah, I'd be okay snipping that question. It does explain some of the version variants, which when I manually looked at the results, I found helpful.
I'm just going to make sure I don't have that in here. Of course, this whole meeting's recorded, so people would see that.
Yeah, let's look at.
I can look after. Because that was only shared with us before. Now it's shared with KDev.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's kill this question. I don't think we need it. I don't think we use it for anything.
Yay, less questions.
What? Any disagreement?
Hooray.
Okay.
No disagreement.
All right. Yeah, and it can be used. Yeah, like, oh, look at we got. All right, versions. Okay. Okay, so we don't like get to the nitty gritty of like, you rolled what versions did you roll back in production? What versions did you roll back in staging? What versions did you roll back? Like, we just ask you to answer these questions, give us the reasons, and then what version did you roll back from? I think that's okay. I don't know that we need, we could stipulate. I did stipulate in here. So the changes, sorry to get back to like changes from last time. I obviously changed the versions. I stipulated in these questions now for a reason other than to test how to roll back and whether it works. Because that was one of our main others that people added, and we don't really care about that. Do I agree? Do you agree?
Yeah, that's a good change. I do remember wishing that we knew when something didn't work right, and that was the reason that they rolled back. I remember wishing that we knew what piece didn't work right. Did we find a way to express that? Because basically people said, yeah, something like a specific component failed, but they didn't tell us which it was because there was no spot for that.
I can add a question, if the failure was due to a feature or what feature and or component triggered the need for rollback?
That's a thing I'm interested in knowing.
I mean, it's gonna be free text, right?
Yeah, but with only 80 responses, I'm willing
Yeah,
to actually read that.
absolutely.
text.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Is there a way to put a text field at the bottom of the existing question? Like, if you check this box, please write the text below. And if not, then yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
If there is, it's beyond my capacity as a Google Forms author.
That's fine. The only other time I've used this is to run after school activity surveys. So
Yeah, exactly. It works well enough, but all right. So then, something like that.
yeah, I think so.
All right, and then make sure you understand I tried to be as explicit as possible, but maybe it's too explicit and makes it confusing.
Well, it's clear to me, but that's I would probably phrase that question very similarly.
All right.
It might be clearer to give an example. So rather than specifying X and Y versions, say if you went from 114 to 113,
Oh,
say
okay. All right. So it's an EG, not an IE.
Yeah.
All right. I'll do the one that we'll probably see a lot of.
It's just nice to know somebody who knows the difference between those two phrases.
Great.
All right. And then patch version for a reason other than testing. If you did all of this, and then I just need I can't list all those obviously, so just give me a comma separated list.
I'd also like to know again what was the short answer piece that required it.
This one, right?
Yeah.
Well, somebody didn't like my EG. They changed it to this. Okay.
Was that me? I just moved something out of the question into a description to make it easier.
And you changed. Yeah, that's fine. I don't mind. I'm just teasing. All right. I'm not sensitive.
It was not intended as a critique. I'm just trying to help.
I didn't even know this field existed. There's a.
It's in the 3-button kebab menu. There's a secret add description, and then you can do the little small text under the question.
Spiffy. I like it.
Yeah, that is nice. Okay, patch version. If you roll batch for reason, then you have to do what component features. Oh, this should go below that one. All right. Cool. All right. And features. Have you ever enabled an alpha feature, disabled a beta feature? If you disable the beta feature, what was the reason? I guess here you probably want the same thing, right?
I would like to know about the betas.
The
I
details
guess,
of why they, right?
yeah.
I mean, maybe we need a long, the thing is, it's like, well, I disabled this beta feature because of this problem and this beta feature because of that problem.
Yeah. How much goes in a short answer? Like, it's got to be a couple
I don't
hundred
know.
characters.
Yeah. Oh, should I add that for a reason other than testing to these too? I wonder, let's see if that's what people answered.
I guess it didn't occur to me that they would enable a beta or alpha beta feature for testing.
Disable one just to see how that works. I don't know. That seems a little bit.
Yeah, I guess beta should be on by default.
Yeah.
Right, but they might disable. Not they wouldn't enable alpha, but they might disable beta. Like, let's see. The people gave me reasons to test it. Nobody answered that. Okay, then let's not worry about that. I had to hand code these the test reasons, right? So that's why, if you know, but nobody answered it, which makes sense to me that that's not something people would do that for.
Now, I would like to change the question that we had about are developers in your organization allowed to rely on beta features? I'd like them to give a list of the beta features that they're allowed to rely on.
Oh, nobody's going to do that, David. Come on.
No one's going to do that? You don't think so?
They're not going to take. They're not going to take the time to do that. They're going to go. What are they going to go look up the feature gates? I mean, you're just like there's so
that's
many.
A long list.
All right.
You probably have 3 or 4 in mind you're thinking of, and like there's a lot more than that.
Okay.
I guess you could ask them what their favorite beta features are. I think that would accomplish about the same thing.
That would actually. Listing your favorite beta features would do the same thing that I'm interested in.
Well, hopefully they're not going to be that many beta features because they're all going to start.
Yeah, because they're supposed to be graduating.
Well, so there's a distinction between beta APIs and beta features, right? We have a pretty clear way to gate and enforce APIs, but not feature gates. So
yeah, and we're focused on features for the context of this discussion, right? Not APIs.
Yeah, not just APIs, correct.
Both.
Okay.
I think if we want to do
so
both,
here we were
should
trying to get at.
If they give me a list, I'll be able to pick out what's a feature and what's an API. Reader side.
Oh, sure. Sorry, I was just saying if we want to do both, we might want to try to split that out more explicitly, because I suspect that like we have a separate. I'm certainly not doing any API review as part of PRR right now, so.
True, they often graduate together. I mean, Node, I don't know, everyone's different and special in their own ways, I guess.
That is definitely true.
Okay, I lost track of where we are. What are you?
It's very hard. Sorry, I guess the next question is if you ever disabled or turned off a GA feature. For the most part, they don't have feature gates anymore to turn off.
It's hard to do. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not even, it's hard to do. Like the feature gates get removed. They're locked to true. So.
Right. But last time David said there's a few things.
Yeah, there's a few that's not true for, but.
That's not, before it was much more common. A year ago, we didn't have this strict feature gate handling that we have now. So I agree. This question, it doesn't really make sense anymore.
Should we kill it then?
Yeah.
I mean, last time, what did we get? I mean, we had, let's say, this is sliced already. Let's see. By nodes, let's just overall. Disabled a GA. That's actually quite a lot of people.
Those are those percentages? Like that's
Yeah.
confusing. That's 66.7.
That's 2/3 of the. Oh, that's of the people who did have disabled it. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah,
okay.
do you know what the raw numbers are?
Well, there's only 80 people, so.
And they might not have answered it because it's optional, right?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have that.
Because if it turns out, there were like 4 people.
It looks like I
then
missed a chart in here. It's probably because we probably have to go back and look at the raw.
Okay. How about we say that if more than, I don't know, 40%, more than 30% have previously disabled a GA feature, maybe we should keep the question. But if 30% hadn't done it, then there's no reason to keep the 2 questions.
Should be responsive here. I have to be careful though, because let me stop displaying because there's people's email addresses in here. Last time I displayed this, I scrolled past them and then I was like, oh man, and I edited a video. It was a pain in the ass.
Okay.
I think this is just a summary section, so it looks like they have the number of responses per question. Hopefully we won't get emails if you scroll.
You're not seeing my screen right now, right?
I see a screen, but it's frozen.
It's frozen, so I'm okay.
I don't know if you're scrolling or not.
I did scroll on. Now I'm past the.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm past the people's email addresses. I don't want it on the recording. I mean, it's not like it's likely people are going to scrape a recording to get email addresses and send spam, but I just feel like I shouldn't be exposing people's emails. So.
Okay, good. This has the numbers. And it was already very small for numbers of beta features and GA.
Did I just pass it?
Yeah, if you scroll up, it's like, oh yeah, it was like 4 people.
3 responses. Okay, so
I think we can get rid of that one.
Reclaim your real estate, your survey real estate.
Well, the funny thing is, it's also true for the beta features. Like there were only like 4 people. 4 for it didn't work as expected, 3 for it failed, 2 for something else, and 1 for the other.
No, 6 for
7 responses.
Yeah, I should do
78.
my processing,
so that's like 10%.
Over the. Yeah.
I think people were answering multiple times, right? If there's 7 responses.
No, I think that's the number of people who responded, because you can see above there's 55 for whatever the question above is.
I do think 10% is enough to make it worthwhile to keep that particular question.
Yeah, we should probably keep the beta one, but for the like 3 people who responded for the GA one, I think we can just can that question.
Well, we need to, when I do the analysis, I need to say, I need to do, what is this one? Disabled beta. Oh yeah, these are all percentages. This is like 8%, right? It's showing that already. Okay, here we go. Disabled GA in development is, 2.5%. Disabled GA in staging, disabled GA in production. I just couldn't read my own charts. Thank you. So these are percentages here. So they're pretty small. The biggest thing is disabling beta in production at 7.7%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we can probably can the GA questions.
Okay. How much time do we have, by the way? Okay. All right.
We have 15 minutes left.
Okay. You disable the beta feature. Do we want to ask anything about, oops, I didn't finish this question. What do we want to ask about the beta feature?
Why don't we ask them which feature they rolled
feature and
back?
version.
Yeah. Because we only have the version right now. We're not asking for which feature it was.
Yeah, well, that's because I copied the question from somewhere else. Okay. Sorry, pedantic. That'll be a little bit more readable. Okay, anything else there? I'm a little afraid to ask the question about alpha features in production. I don't know why we didn't ask it.
Remove the question about.
Maybe we should we ask it? I feel like a lot of
We
people use
found
alpha features in production.
We found that 1/3 of people had enabled an alpha feature in production, which was very kind of concerning.
That seems like data we should be collecting. So yeah, I'm pro alpha feature.
This is a slightly more specific question. Like before, it's just have you ever enabled it in production? This is can you rely on it? Are you allowed to rely on it? Which is quite a different thing, I think. All right. Okay. Should we say Prometheus? We should just say metrics. Because people might be like, well, I mean, it's kind of pedantic again, but
sure.
If they're using a different metrics, scraping. Okay. All right. And then I updated this question a little bit. I sort of in an alphabetical order, just because I thought that was more politic. And I added Datadog, which was a little cluster we had. People wanted to distinguish between Fluent D and Fluent Bit, so I added Fluent Bit. I added New Relic. Those were little clusters we had in our freeform responses.
Sounds good.
And then we have a bunch of long form open-ended questions. You know, one thing we never did, and we never like actually followed up on that. We asked people their email. We had a good 20 people give their email saying they'd be willing to talk to us for follow-up. And we never, I guess it was just too intensive, the amount of work involved, but we never like followed through on actually
we could still do that.
Yes, we can still do that. Absolutely.
Well, I'm most interested in whether the same people respond, tracking the response over time.
Yeah, that too. If they respond again, we should definitely follow up with them. But would it be worth following up with them in the meantime?
Well,
I guess I wasn't around for.
I would like to just make sure they take the survey again. That's
yeah. Yeah, sure, we could do that for sure. Where we stalled last time was we needed to come up with a good set of interview questions that would be efficiently, we get what we want and be useful and not waste our time. And we never actually finished that document.
Yeah, well, I think this is that document. I think it's you answered last time, please answer this time and let us know, the difference. Or we will find the difference once you answer.
Okay, so are we pleased? The one thing we had left open was, Alana, you were going to work on this question. Oh, okay.
I did it.
Let's
Tell
see
me if
what
you
we
like
think
this
about
better.
I'd like an other field, but I like that.
Yeah, that's great. I'll add another field. That's awesome. I like that a lot better, actually. All right.
And then I guess we can delete the first one.
Yep. All
I
right.
tried to think of everything that I've ever done with Kubernetes. Obviously, I
should these
am
though
the
be
shining
checkbox?
example. Well, so I think, no, I want it to be a
but
radio
Alana,
bubble because I want it to be the focus. Like, what do you do
the
now?
best described.
Yeah, because like, you know, if somebody
Alright,
has submitted a patch one time, but they run like a cluster as their primary job responsibility, I think we want that to be the one picked.
Yes. Okay, that's cool. And Kirsten, yes, a number of these do allow multiple selections. The ones that are square are multiple selections. Ones that are round are radio buttons. So, yeah, many of them are allow multiple. All right.
I'm happy.
Awesome. Then can we ship it?
I think there was one more spot where I just saw you scroll past where you still had the 1.x and x+1, and
Oh yeah. Okay.
you can do.
Yeah, there are probably.
But other,
There's a few places that will have that, but we can.
we need to find Alana's button.
Oh, it's on the kebab menu, beside required and the clicky thing. Description. It's so confusing.
Okay.
I don't know where they hide it there.
So, have you ever rolled back a community patch version update for a reason other than testing? For example, rolling back from 1.17.5 to 1.17.4. Whoops.
Other than nitpicks like that, I think I am happy with the survey.
Okay, cool. Then I will go through it one more time offline and fix those things. And what then? Last time I sent it out to the Kubernetes KDev, of course. I sent it to the Kubernetes discuss thing. I probably poked it on Slack in different channels like K users and whatever else there is on Slack. But I guess we can do all that and we can talk to Contribex about how we might get it out there and widely shared. And hopefully we'll get even more responses this time.
Yep. I guess the only thing I would add is maybe ask them whether there is some sort of normal, easy way to take the email list we have from previous respondents and see if they'll take the updated one.
Yeah, my usual way to do that would be to put them in an email and send a personal plea.
That works fine for me.
Okay.
And we did say that we would use it for purposes like that. So
Yes. All right. Any other things we wanted to talk about today? There's nothing really else on the agenda other than, you know, somebody review this. I assigned it to the three of you on the team. So I don't think it's anything controversial. It's pretty trivial. And anything else anybody else wants to bring up?
I brought up, I think in the channel at some point, how do we, now that things are sort of flowing in for PRR, how do we divvy them up? Like, for example, for a thing that somebody did the PRR review in alpha that wants to graduate to beta, is that going to be the same reviewer? Is that going to be a different reviewer? I've been assuming that we're just going to keep the same reviewer on things.
I think when possible, we should. If somebody's overloaded or whatever, then somebody else can take it. But
then we can load balance. Okay, I wanted to make sure that that was actually consensus and I wasn't just making that up.
I mean, there's something to having other people review it and sort of double checking each other's work. But, you know, sometimes you've got to really get familiar with the CAP and like the details of it. And that can take some time. And, you know, if somebody's already familiar.
I never have to learn what you're doing for dual stack. It's just going to work. the first one.
Come on, nobody wants dual stack. Nobody wants to take that from me. It wasn't that bad.
I'm trying to make this its own level of note, and it's just not cooperating with me.
It really isn't, is it?
I'm so happy I'm not the only person who struggles with that because it happens to me every time I make a bullet point list.
This is a new bug I've never seen before.
It happens to me every time.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm
feel
so glad to
better.
get clarity on that because I really wasn't sure. And I'm like, I keep assigning things to John because he did them for me before, but I don't know if that's right. So that's good.
Yeah, that's fine. Have they published the schedule for the release yet? 2022?
No.
Okay. So we don't know when our deadline is yet. Okay.
I don't know. I'm kind of operating on the assumption that either next week or the week after is going to be week 1, but I don't know which.
Yeah.
Savisa's the lead, and she's going to be sending an email out, I think, at the end of the day today. So
Oh, okay.
I'll let her surprise you, or not.
Yay! I'm going to find out soon.
Week 1 is July 1st.
Works for me. I'm going on vacation.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. We'll get this thing sent out.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.